Setting your goals is important and documenting them because that reflection point, some days owning a business, it's like, I can't put out another fire. I don't understand why there's all these problems. And then you go back and you look and you kind of have that moment of like, oh yeah, we're okay. One thing I love about the fall is the idea of building your business plan and strategic planning. I think that, between hoodies, all things fall related, the foliage, not sweating, walking out to your car, and kind of thinking and reflecting about the year, getting ready for a new year, it is one of my favorite seasons. And I get the privilege of every year working with our clients on strategic planning. We thought it'd be a great idea to bring it out to the masses of how do I sit down and write my annual business plan? Now, some agencies have had to build a business plan in the past. Some, this might be your first one. Some might be in good practice and habit of it. But I would say it's good hygiene for your business to be in the habit of an end of year strategic plan. So whether you call it a strategic plan, a business plan, an annual plan, they're all kind of the same things. It's organizing your thoughts so you can evaluate your resources and strategically use your resources, one of the biggest ones being your time, towards hitting your agency's goals. A lot of the agencies, when they come to us, feel like the agency is working them. They're working like a dog, or things are just on track. They're growing by hope, or they're not growing and they're not sure why. A lot of times as agencies grow, you hit different tipping points, different mood swings, if you will, growing pains. And it's easy to grow, and then get stuck. And getting out of that is the key. Also, we see a lot of agencies out there that kind of chase the shiny objects. And, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to invest in this. We're going to get this piece of technology. But in reality, they're doing a lot of things not to full fruition. And so we end up with more versus less. And when we don't have more things and we're not doing all of them to the best, we end up kind of burning a lot of time and resources, which is another reason I love strategic plans, is it stops and allows you to evaluate it. So whether you've done strategic planning forever or this is your first go of it, we want to break down exactly how you can create your agency's insurance business plan for the year. And one thing I will say is we do have a strategic planning workbook with videos that you can use to guide you. So if it's your first one, you want a little help, let us know. You can also work with one of the APP coaches, if you'd like, on exactly how to do that. So no matter what you got, we got you covered, because we believe strongly in the ability to have a plan. Especially as your agency grows, you need to make sure that you're maximizing every resource. A few things, that we need to make sure that we start with is why. Why the heck would I spend the time doing a business plan? Things are going well, we're growing, almost like the adage of don't poke the sleeping bear. Similar to the same way I feel about renewal review calls. At some point, that bear is going to be poked. I would much rather have us poke it in a way that we feel we want to poke it, wake it up gently. Maybe, as opposed to coaxing it out with a big old mean grizzly bear attack. So one of the things that you have to do is realize that every year your agency grows, you need to recalibrate. And the strategic plan will allow you to do that. I know some of the hardest things I've ever had to do in business include admitting when we've outgrown some team members. And team members have been very loyal. They're good people. But at the time, they're what we could afford. And the business needed that caliber. But one day you wake up, and the past 2 years, we've grown over 24%, which is a huge blessing. And I want to say thank you to everybody listening to this podcast for that. And you look around, you're like, unfortunately, we need a higher caliber person at this point. And of course, you want to give everybody every opportunity to step into that. But some people just don't. And some people say this is where they want to be. And those are very difficult business decisions. But as a leader, you have one commitment, and that is hitting the industry's goals, hitting the business's goals, being a steward of all your resources. You can't simply take care of one person. You have to realize by getting the right people with the right skill sets, the right experience, means you're putting rocket fuel in for everybody. We also have to admit that there's not infinite amounts of money. I think this is one of the things that I've learned and I'm getting better at in my career as we have been in business for 9 years now, is you have X amount of money. And there's a concept that I love from an author called Mike Michalowicz, which is profit first. A lot of times it's like, well, we have the money, let's go spend it. If we spend it, we will grow. And that is true to some degree. But I'd much rather say that we should have a budget so that we're not spending irrationally. For every one of those decisions that pays off, there's some that don't. The older I get, the more I realize time is our biggest asset. And so the time it takes to launch something new, the time it takes to make something good. Could I take something that we're already doing and spend the same time and have a different result? The answer a lot of times is yes. And so you need to be budget focused. things can change. You can be ahead of budget, you can be below budget, but those are the items when you can identify exactly where you want to push buttons. It's also important to identify the biggest problems. So in full transparency this year, we have so many new team members due to explosive growth that we just said nothing new, better at what we do. I did, in typical owner format, of course, violate that when the hard market came in, we shifted gears and did a whole hard market session, which I don't regret, but was against what I had said we were going to do. And the team questioned that, said, this is what we should be doing. But what ended up happening was it replaced some of the other revenue we were expecting because everyone was in such a tizzy with the hard market. We found that our biggest problem is onboarding and really getting people up to speed. What we do is intricate and we're very intimate with our customer experience and learning new systems and tools. So everybody has the same values, which I'm blessed for, but the experience and the knowledge of how to operate it is different. I like to use the example of this, which is if I watch Gordon Ramsay make a steak on YouTube, what does it look like the first time? So I do believe in processes. I mean, we built a whole company about helping agencies with processes, but processes and practice are really what work. So getting everybody in the practice and the routine, finding the problems, finding the challenges, scaling has been the name of the game this year. Now, next year, we convert that because everybody should be comfortable in their position is to how do we have the customer experience? I want the wow factor. I want the Chick-fil-A moments. And we have that, but I think we could do better at it. And so next year is all going to be about customer experience and continuing a scaling process. So everyone has a baseline understanding of their job. It's now time to take it up a few notches. And I think, even I was talking to my husband about it today, when you think about all of our resources, maybe the decision is go out, get another consultant because we have the demand. But the other idea is, do we get more ancillary services that we could build up that, don't require another person? And those things will be things that we deal with at the end of the year. I think you have to be thinking about, hey, what's the scenario? I've intentionally had a less than optimal profit margin because of making these investments in the company. I have a big goal to hit by the time I'm 45, which will be about 3 years from now, of really where I want to be and what I want my lifestyle to look like. And I think sometimes in strategic planning as business owners, we think so much about other people, which is amazing, but I also understand where I want to be. And if the business is not serving that and I'm over serving the business, that's when the resentment starts to come in and entrepreneurs unplug or we overwork and we become resentful and we run off good people. And so you have to understand where you want to be. I've been on the road now for 20 years, give or take, maybe 15 to 20 years. And of course, I'd love to slow that down. And that means putting in some key investments into the team and strategic partnerships, as well as enterprise level clients that can do things more remotely. Once you get your idea, your biggest problems, then you can start looking at solutions. And some solutions as your company grows take time. They won't be a light switch. It won't be, I bought this, it's fixed, it's done. It's it's a complete and utter patience game, which again, something I struggle with and am working on. You also want to clarify your team where to focus. Insurance agencies and consulting firms run shockingly similarly. We don't really have a product. The difference is you have a heck of a lot more renewable income than we have, but we're working on that. That was a challenge that was identified about 2 years ago in our agency school and some of our online platforms. And again, thank you guys so much for your patronage. It's been great to have some ways that you guys could work on things without the highest touch and been very, very fruitful for us. So we appreciate that. But your biggest expense is always going to be your staff. And so we have to identify where does your staff's focus and time go? Because it can't be on everything. When we can focus on maybe in cross-selling or retention, putting those together move the needle. And then what happens is it becomes routine. It becomes part of your day. Renewal calls become part of your day. Or asking 2 people a day can become part of a day. I love James Clear, Atomic Habits, where small things unconsistently add up. And I can't say enough about that. It is so true. You have to identify where do you want your team to put their focus. This is one comment we get all the time from team members. I am unsure what the priority is. Well, that can change day to day. And I don't know that there's ever going to be the clarity we all would love, but we can certainly provide some guidance on that front. And the last one is one I'm often victim of. What do they say? They say that a lot of times you might write content that you need yourself. You talk to people or provide things you need. So I have definitely been somebody who has not always stopped and celebrated the wins because in my mind, as we were getting closer to the win, I was almost diving into the next one, knowing that hey, the target is right there. We're going to cross that finish line. And what that does is, one, it makes us a hybrid company. The side effect to that is there's not the time to stop and smell the roses, celebrate the wins, celebrate the successes. And even as I'm shooting this right now, this business plan, module that we were doing for our strategic planning for our online school that you guys can buy the workbook for to help you with strategic planning. I started that in August, which means my head dove into 2024 for us. Because as I'm kind of writing it and going through some of the things we've done in the past, I'm like, well, we should do this next year. We should do this. And I'm like, hold on a second here. Like, I kind of need to keep my head right here into this moment. And I told my managers and leaders, it's like, I kind of need you guys to finish off 2023 so that the visionary me can get to 2024. And they all agreed. But I do think we need to sometimes stop, because the hardest part about growing, especially, and we have a couple of high growth agencies that are growing in a bit of the same trajectory we are, is growth does come with growing pains. And so there's days where you sort of feel like that firefighter. I'm putting out this fire, I'm putting out that fire, I'm putting out that fire. And the reality of the situation is that you're putting out the fires, but there's still wins to be had. So we need to make sure that we celebrate those, celebrate the fire getting put out and move on to the next one. In order to do that, you really need to just stop and say, okay, how is my 2024 going to go? And this is such great timing because we're in November when this podcast is being released. Maybe you're listening to this in March, and that's okay. Don't think that you have to strategic plan at a certain point of year. There is a cool cadence to that end of year thing, but I will say, don't worry about it. If it's March and you're finding this, no time like the present. You got to stop and get your current business performance down pat. Where are we? And I think that this is both business and personal life. I have often hated that term work-life balance. And I've hated the term work-life balance more from the perspective of this idea that one and the other don't always combine. And I look at it like synergy between both. How hard I work impacts my personal life. And from the event of vacations we can take, vacation homes we can buy, how easy it is. My husband actually was able to leave his job and focus on property management for us. And that all took a whole lot of hard work. I mean, he managed a very successful elevator company and had a great salary and benefits. And so part of our strategic plan was getting to a place where that could be a reality. So when I go someplace great, like Chicago or Vegas or, anywhere, he's got more freedom and flexibility to come along, knowing that that's our plan. So why I say this is that you have to understand where you're trying to go personally so that the business supports it. The older I get, the more it's more about how do I have the freedom of time, and how do I have the freedom of time, not time for myself necessarily, although that's critical. How do I have more time to spend with my staff? When you're go, 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 and there's clients all the time to serve who I love dearly, it's very much a balancing act of who gets your time. And I can make another dollar. I can figure out how to scale money. Can't figure out how to scale time. And so looking at that, it's kind of like, okay, how can I clear off all the boundaries and barriers for me to free up my time? And then how do we go ahead and look at reporting, right? Like, how do we know the metrics? That was a big push that we did because of so much scale and growth. Some of the reporting and tracking systems we were using were just not as critical anymore. They were different. We needed to scale those as well. And when I started kind of diving into the numbers, it was kind of amazing how many things I still had my hands on. I go out and teach agencies this, but again, sometimes the owners, the people who are creating content also need those moments too. You also want to set goals. We set a goal of growing 10% with a stretch of 18 and ended up at 24, and we're trending about the same this year, which again, I'm so very blessed for. And I'm giving so much gratitude to everybody, part of APP clients, the industry that we're in. But otherwise, it would just feel like, oh my gosh. Some of those goals have to change, like bringing the money in. We've made huge investments, so the profit margin is down. And next year, that profit margin goal will become critical as well. So you have to sit down and say, what are your goals? And this happens, by the way, some of the things I'm talking about here, if you're doing your first business plan, might seem so foreign or so far-fetched. It's because we've done it for probably 5 or 6 years now. Now, we've always had some kind of business plan. And it was funny. I was actually looking at some of my first year's business plans. Remember, it just started out just me working in, a side room here thinking, can I just replace my salary? And I probably deep down knew that that was more than that, but that was where my head was at because you're nervous, right? I left a 6-figure job, all the benefits, all the security. My mom thought I was crazy because, she was a school teacher and she had the pension and all the structure. And, you're taking this huge leap of faith that this will work. And there's a lot of people I give a lot of gratitude that kind of saw me and mentored me along the way on that. But when you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, the first year's goals, and I just say this to tell you a story of, some of my first year's goals were along the lines of, okay, if I hit this, and in the section was, how are you going to celebrate your wins, which I already shared. I struggle with a little bit. It was like, you are going to buy a 100% top to bottom Pottery Barn bedding set, like the sheets, the pillows, the things. Now, if anybody's ever actually gone out and like looked at a Pottery Barn, I mean, you're talking to like well into like the thousands range, right? Like depending what you're getting. And I was like, that would be so amazing, because I used to work at the Pottery Barn in college, number one. And number two, their beds look amazing. So I'll give you our top secret tip. The Pottery Barn beds there have not one but two duvets in them. That's what makes them so fluffy. If that wasn't worth the cost of admission, I don't know what is. But I was looking at that and I was like, buy one new designer professional outfit. And again, it wasn't like buying head to toe Louis Vuitton at the point. It was like, I don't know, like an Ann Taylor suit for $300, which again, so grateful for. And now I look at that and I'm like, all these things are so not important to me. But when we didn't have as much, money, these were the things that I looked at like was achievement. And now today my goals changed, but it's cool to be able to look back on that stuff and see forward. So setting your goals is important, and documenting them, because that reflection point, some days owning a business, it's like, I can't put out another fire. I don't understand why there's all these problems. And then you go back and you look and you kind of have that moment of like, oh yeah, we're okay. I think another big thing is, evaluating the market. So there is opportunity in every difficulty. I might have that on my gravestone when I die. I believe that in my heart. And so as we're shooting this, the hard market is here. There's opportunity. There'll be opportunity because carriers will cut contracts of smaller agencies. There will be opportunity because some of the agencies will need to sell. And as opposed to paying a premium like you would have last year, you're going to pay pennies on the dollar this year. So identifying that. There's even shifts. Like if your state opens up the ability to sell marijuana, that's a whole new market. Or if laws are changing, or you know what, you realize you have a great commercial book, you need to find a benefits person or develop a benefits person. I think, looking at the market is huge. Sometimes in insurance, I get so frustrated because we get so new business, and we kind of forget retention, and then it get the retention up high, cross sell, and we're just not doing the blocking and tackling that we do all year long when we need to do those things. So it's good to look at your products and services. And lead generation, I believe like one of the things, if you did look at our budget and our profit margin, is we spend a ton of money on marketing, but it's grassroots like SEO marketing. Like this podcast is evergreen. Our website, the amount of blogs that we write, we put out there, YouTube content. And the reason I do that is that lasts forever, as opposed to buying ads. That's a one-time hit. I have to keep funneling that. The investments I'm making, I predict will keep propelling us for a long time, building a database. So our marketing foundation, albeit our budgets are high, is also an opportunity for us to really dive deep into that. And so we have a list in our blog that I hope you check out that's associated with this podcast of, these are the marketing things you got to have before you get on the fancy stuff. Many times agencies call me and say, thinking about dumping 15 grand into paid search. And I was like, don't. And they're like, why? And I was like, you don't have enough Google reviews. Like there's things you could do for free now. You just got to put the sweat equity in. Marketing has changed so much. It's no longer pay to play. It's you pay your time to play in it. Technology and automation. I firmly believe that the way that we're going to scale agencies is via adopted technology that is good, clean, and easy. And that's not always the case. There's a lot of shiny objects. There's a lot of noise with technology. And unfortunately, so many agencies don't take the time to learn it, implement it, install it, build the processes, that they kind of turn it on and everybody's like flopping around with it and it doesn't work. And then you might go buy another piece of technology, but this is baked in. And I just think you just have to stop and say, hey, make a good investment in a core piece of technology that's going to power as much as it can and use it. Use it to its fullest. Don't go find other things because you don't think it works that well. All the systems work. Sometimes you just have to learn how to work it. Now, the integrations, I could spend a whole other podcast on. I feel differently about that. Team training. So a lot of times you'll sit down and say, okay, my business plan is this, but you'll be like, oh, well, but we've tried cross-selling. It doesn't work. Or no one asked for life insurance. That's another big one. And I always say, well, hold on. What if you instead said, this is my plan to your whole team. In Q1, we're going to focus 90 days of life insurance cross-sell training. Because the repetition, not just telling somebody, not just doing a one-time 5-minute video or a half-hour webinar, it's a continuous effort, especially as your agency grows, to really get there. So I strongly encourage everybody to think about training. What do you need? How can you develop it? Think of us for that. I mean, we've got everything from online schools to coming out in person. How you're going to track everything. The biggest thing I feel like some days that we bring to the table is the transparency of numbers. I'll just tell you guys a quick story. I work with an agency that just launched renewal reviews, and they're doing ahead of where normal launch is. The beginning's real rocky, so they're ahead of our first benchmark. One of the numbers is up, which is the connection rate. I am always so blessed when agencies record phone calls. If you're not doing that, add that to your list of technology. It's priceless. And, this is a good veteran team of people. And, when we talk about, well, how do you leave a voicemail? Well, I leave a good voicemail and I just say this. And then inevitably, as I'm listening to the phone calls, it's like, well, I was calling to see if you might want to review your policies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to say yes to this. This is why we're not getting phone calls. But it's like that dead to rights moment, right? Where we all think one thing. It's inevitable. I got back from vacation and we've been on this goal process internally of like a big goal we all want to hit by the end of the year. And there's big money we're putting out there. So we have a big goal. And at the end of the day, one of the things that's really amazing to me is like I went on vacation and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to step on the scale and this is going to be a disaster. And it wasn't pretty. And I knew it wasn't pretty. And like the day after I fly, I always retain water way more. Anyway, that's a lot of information, I'm sure. But any hoozle. So one of the things that was like, okay, but by me tracking it every week, like I had went down and went back on track where I was. It was like a temporary blip. And so tracking is so critical because it takes that transparency out. If every other agency's got a connection rate of at least 42%, that's our mid target, higher in a hard market, and yours is 22%, there's something different in the way you're leaving the voicemail. It's just that dead to right. And your tracking will allow you to do that. So I believe strongly in business plans. I believe strongly in giving that direction to your team. They want it. Otherwise, your team's going all these different directions, only doing what they see fit. So that is my message. Listen to our stuff this month on business plans. Join one of our mastermind groups that we have on business planning. Work with us on it. It's 10 times more fun to see your own blind spots and work on a business plan, collectively. So that's our message. We'll see you soon.